Welcome to another Shiur, another Maamar we're going to be learning in the Mizgeres of Project Melukat. These Maamar, like always, are learned l'schus and l'nishmas, our beloved Rashbi, Cakiva Wagner. The Maamar we learned tonight is unique in the sense we are now making a siyum, concluding the Maamarim of Melukat Beis in connection with Rabbi Wagner's yahrzeit and Yud Zayin Ir and his Yemoledis to Zayin Ir. So the Maamar we're learning now is the Maamar of Lag BaOmer. We said Lag BaOmer Tavshem Mem Hey is a weekday for bringing a murdike, sturmike Maamar, where the Rebbe basically talks tremendous oasis on the praise of Rashbi, which is based on the Maamar of the previous Rebbeim, and almoist uses the Eibishter as an analogy to explain the tremendous praise, the greatness, the idea of Rashbi and the idea of Lag BaOmer. Throughout the Maamar, the Rebbe is going to first explain the concept of praising Rashbi, explain how it affects Rashbi, even though he was so great. We're going to explain what exactly the specifics were, what were the praises and what they represent, and how it all ties in to the Avodah of Shiur and to Lag BaOmer, which is known Lag BaOmer as the conclusion of the Ikra Midas, right? Hoid Shebahoid, we already have refined the primary aspects of our character. The Maamar was Muga, and in Tavshem Mem Ches, which is the second half of our Sefer of Melukat Beis. Let's get right in. So the Maamar is miyusad on the Maamar there, Marash, the Divrei Maschil, L'havin, Inyan, Rashbi. Let's understand the concept of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, which is obviously the Yom Lula is passing, the Talmud of Rabbi Akiva, he passed away in Lag BaOmer. You do a Maamar Lag BaOmer, Shalom Marash, it's known the Maamar of the Rebbe Marash, Baal, Hayur Olach Tchila Riber, which the Yemoledis, the birthday of Marash, just passed on Beis, which Tiferes Shebetiferes, Idea of Tchila Riber. So this Maamar is based on the Maamar of Marash. We find in the Zohar, which is the Sefer of Shimon Bar Yochai, that the other sages, the colleagues, gave him tremendous praise. Praise means things that are awesome, things that are completely above. Rabbi Yehuda will refer to Rashbi as Shabbos. Rashbi as well, they would say, who is the face of the Eibishter? The master Hashem in our world, that's Rashbi. Yuvan, so we'll understand the concept, the idea of giving a human being such tremendous praise. We'll understand this from the concept of the fact that we give the Eibishter praise. Let's understand. What's pshat that the Eibishter needs a Yid's praise? So it's explained at length. We know the Eibishter is completely above, completely disconnected from our world. The Eibishter is unlimited. Our world is a finite creation, and therefore, theoretically, the Eibishter and the world, in theory, have no connection, no relationship. So obviously for the Eibishter to have a connection, to transmit energy, brachas, into our world, to be involved intimately in our world, is obviously a tremendous descent for the Eibishter. Why would he do it? The way a Eibishter connects to our world, and the way a Yid creates that relationship, that the Eibishter even want to have a relationship with our world, that is through a Yid praising the Eibishter. This also connects and explains what Razal teach. A person before he starts to daven, which davening here refers to Shemon Esrei, you should first praise the Eibishter, which is entire Psukkah de Zimra. Seemingly it's not understood. Tefillah, davening, asking the Eibishter for your needs, that is a chiyuv, that is an instruction from Hashem. We know whenever the Eibishter expects something from a Yid that has a tremendous koyach, a Yid has the ability to do it, so why do we need preparations? Nevertheless, it's not enough. First you need to organize, literally, the Eibishter's praise. The reason for this is, through this we arouse, we awaken the Eibishter's Ratzin Lashpia Tzarchei HaMeshabeach. Now that we establish a connection, a relationship through the praise, now the Eibishter wants to open the gates, open the flow of energy and brachas and everything a person needs. Now that we understand why a person praises the Eibishter, we can also understand why the Rashbi's Chaverim, the other colleagues, praised him because he was so much elevated, so disconnected from the rest of the Tanoim. He, so to speak, didn't exist in their world. Incomparably greater. If they wanted to awaken and to arouse the shefa, the transmission of anything Rashbi would give them, they needed to first praise him. Which is a tremendous idea. In other words, Rashbi was Be'ein HaReich, who's completely above, and just like the Eibishter, for him to have a shaykhis to our world, a connection, it's through praise. That's how we bring him. We, so to speak, awaken his interest in creation. So too, the friends of Rashbi needed to, so to speak, awaken and bring him into our world through praising him. The Rebbe says even more than that. It's not just the comparison where, if you want to bring something from somewhere bein areich, you need to praise, but much more than that, the fact that the Maamar that Marash compares the praise of Hashem to the praise of Rashbi, in addition to the simple explanation, where he's trying to bring out the point, if you want to be mo'ir, awaken something which on its own doesn't have a relationship, you need to praise. More than that. We're describing the difference, the distinction between Rashbi and the rest of the Tanoim, the rest of his colleagues. Literally, like the difference between a Nivra and a Boira, a creator and a creation, just like our distance between us and the Eibishter is Be'en Aroich, the same difference exists between Rashbi and the rest of the Tanoim. That's why he wouldn't just say beautiful praises, great praises, but it was awesome praises. Awesome, the idea of noira, of fear, when something was so distant and so disconnected, is the idea of fear, which is something that literally doesn't exist in my world. And that's what Rebbe, by the way, adds here to what the Rebbe Marash was saying. The Rebbe Marash simply just brings an analogy to explain why are we praising him, because he's completely above. The Rebbe is adding here via Shleimar, it's not just that he was above, like the Eibush is above us, but the same distinction, like we and the Eibishter, Nivra and Boira, is the same distinction between Rashbi and the rest of the Tanoim. What's Pshat? How do you explain that? Let's understand what's the purpose, what's the function of the Tanoim, what are they here to do? And basically we'll understand why Rashbi is so much elevated and why they needed his hashpah, they needed his, whatever he was going to share. Pasuk says there are the strong ones that establish our world, and the explanation is I'll teach Eisanim Oisis Tanoim. The word Eisanim, the strong ones, are the letters Tanoim. The Heima Miyastim is Teresh Balpeh Shenikum Shem Eretz. They establish Eretz, which Eretz is Teresh Balpeh. Hainu Shemamshichim Prinas Eisam Teresh Balpeh. What does it mean to strengthen Eretz, to strengthen Torah? The Razal, our sages, the Tanoim, they are the ones who bring Eisan, bring strength into Teresh Balpeh. Yeshloimar. So now the Rebbe in one line is going to tell us the seed, the idea, which he's going to expound upon in the next two aces. Yishleimar Shem Shochas Eisan La Tanoim. Who gives the Tanoim themselves this strength, this Eisan, or did Rashbi? So Rashbi gives Eisan to the Tanoim, and the Tanoim's job is now take that Eisan, that strength, and establish Torah Shebiksav. He was the intermediate between Eisan, between strength and Torah. And now they would need Rashbi to bring Eisan into Torah. What does that exactly mean? So let's see. Inyan. What's the connection between Rashbi and the concept of strength? Eisan goes on the essence of the neshama, the essence of the soul. We know every neshama has different parts. The highest part, like he's going to explain, is yichida, which means oneness, which is connected and unified with the oneness of the Eibishter. So yeah, Shaykh is the Eisan Rashbi, and that's also the connection why Rashbi had this Eisan. Rashbi hoyo betachsa yichud. Rashbi was completely unified. In other words, Rashbi was the yichida of Klal Yisrael and the yichida of Torah, like he's going to explain. Rashbi says about himself before he passed away, all I am is a sign of Hashem, meaning I'm just an extension of the Eibishter's glory. I don't have a self-identity. Bechad ketira is katarna beig, because he says I have this one knot, one connection to the Eibishter. Be'achidatim, I'm one. Be'lehitatim, I have this flame, this fire, this passion, beis dapkis, and I am literally connected one with him. Kavur ba'aretz amur in Melukat the Rebbe brings here the Rebbe's father, which explains the difference between the three, being one and having a passion, and also cleaving to the Eibishter. This bittul that he's describing is the bittul of yichida, of the highest essence of the neshama. Now we'll explain also why Rashbi is the one who authored the Zohar, and he was the one who had that breakthrough of Pnimis HaTorah. He was the source of the essence of Torah. Why? You have obviously the guf, the body of Torah, which that is the halacha, to know what to do, what not to do. Then you have the neshama of Torah, which is the soul of Torah. Then in addition to just the soul of Torah, you have the soul of the soul, the neshama of the neshama, the secrets of Torah, which is the yichida, the essence. In other words, you have the neshama that comes down to the body. Then you have the neshama of the neshama, the part that stays above, which is chai yichida. Within the neshama of the neshama, that's where the neshama of Torah exists. within the neshama you have chaya and you have yichida, but yichida is there as well. So that's a concept here where he becomes the mucker for pnimius ha-Torah, which is the neshama of Torah. To the extent, it wasn't just that he was yichida, he was this distinct, he was the essence of Torah, he was pnimius ha-Torah, but more than that. Even the way he learned and dissected nigla, which, by the way, that was most of his limud. Most of what he learned was halacha, to the extent we find him almost, I think, on every daf in Shas, you find him Shimon. I think that's what the Alter Rebbe says. He would learn nigla the same way he learned Primus HaTorah. What does that mean? There's a way of learning nigla, there's a way of learning halacha, and then there's a way of learning chassidus, and he would learn nigla the way a typical person would learn chassidus. What's the pshat? Typically we say the distinction, the difference between nigla and primus ha-Torah. The Eibish's purpose in creation obviously is to elevate and to refine and to make our world holy. What does that? So you have Torah, and the Torah governs, the Torah guides, and when I use Torah, I'm able to utilize everything properly. In other words, Torah gets down into the nitty-gritty differentiation, the differences of every aspect of our life, literally how to live. Ultimately, we know Chassidus doesn't get down and dirty. Chassidus remains above the system, above Ishtalshlus. So what is the purpose of Chassidus? Right? The purpose of Nigla is to refine, to elevate. So what's the purpose of Chassidus? It's the opposite. It's not to elevate, but it's to be from above and to inspire from a completely different place. When you learn Chassidus, you're not dealing with the ins and out of our world, you're dealing with something completely above, and it's supposed to consume you from that angle. Rashbi, on the other hand, Rashbi had the perspective of Chassidus while learning Nigla. What do we mean? When he was learning Torah, he could have been learning about a Shir, he could be learning about practical cases, but within that, the neshama of Torah, the essence of Torah shined. So when he was learning Nigla, it didn't seem like something that existed here in our realm. It was like learning Chassidus, which is just something from a different world that's inspiring and that's illuminating. Here we see the advantage of Rashbi on all the other sages. Why? Within the rest of the sages, yet some that associated themselves primarily with learning Nigla, with learning Halacha, yet some which associated themselves with learning Chassidus, and that's where they would put their main focus and the main effort. Obviously, the main body of sages were busy with dissecting law. The Mari Kabbalah Matan Hayu, there were very few that were involved in Kabbalah, which is the oral tradition that we receive from Moshe Rabbeinu, the secrets of Torah. Rabbi Yehuda, like he brings examples here. Rabbi Yehuda Kula Tanoi ben Niziknav. Rabbi Yehuda would literally, all of Rabbi Yehuda's chidushim are all in Nizikin. To the extent it's the lowest within Torah itself, it deals with monetary damage within our world. Nizikin, time shel sheker. We're learning now in Chetzkas Habatim, the Yeshivas Halurim Baba Basra, where there's the idea of a migu. One guy is lying, he could have gave a bigger lie. You're literally getting into the lowest aspects of our world. And the purpose obviously is, the purpose obviously is to discover and to elevate the energy, the godliness which exists in everything. And obviously that's important. And then you have those sages, their main focus was on learning Chassidus, Ma'asim Merkava. They're dealing with the chariot of the Eibishter. They were busy dealing with the spiritual physics of creation. They weren't dealing with our world. We have a Sefer Kabbalah called Sefer Hakana that was created by Nechuni ben Hakana. And the Rebbe says you hardly find any teachings of Nigla because he was busy with the neshama of Torah. Others were busy with the body of Torah. Rashbi is a very interesting phenomenon. First of all, his involvement in Nister was something that was different and greater than any other sage. Like he brings in the R33, he was literally on his own level when it came to Nister, and at the same time, he was able to penetrate the light of Chassidus, the light of the Eibish's oneness, into the Nigla. The Eibisher says that there are certain illnesses, and the Eibusher says, I will heal them, but machatzi also means like a mechitzas. The Eibusher makes certain guidelines within creation. So the Eibusher created certain mechitzas, certain division, and Rashbi was able to Vani Erpa, he was able to heal those divisions. He's able to heal the basic distinction between Nigla and Chassidus and bring it all together. V'acha and Nigla v'nisei Imchad, it literally all became one. So what's the idea here? Every sage, every one of the Tanoim had his focus, had his Inyan. Either I'm dealing with the body of Torah, or I'm dealing with the neshama of Torah. But either way, he had his identity, he had his personality, he had what he kocht in, and that was what he dealt with. Then you have a person like Rashbi. Rashbi is Yichida. Rashbi is the essence. B'meila, he's not either one. He's everything and everybody. B'meila, he was able to find the essence in everything. Within Nigla, he saw Chassidus. Within Chassidus, he saw everything is really Pnimius HaTorah, the Eibish's oneness. And therefore, he was able to bring the Elokus, the Kedusha of Torah, into everything. Gimel. Now we'll understand why the elevation, the Aliyah, this distinction of Rashbi to the rest of the Tanaim was actually something completely incomparable. Now we'll understand how the advantage, the elevation of Rashbi on the rest of the Tanaim was something which is incomparable. To the extent they needed to literally praise him in order to bring his flow. Trying to understand the difference between Yichida, the fifth, the name of the Neshama, on Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chai, the other four names, it's Bein Arich, it's something which doesn't exist in the same world. What does Yichida mean? Yichida means single, it doesn't mean one. One, it would mean there's one, there's two, it's part of a certain system of numbers. Here it's singular, in other words, it exists in its own merit. Torah, Yachid literally means it's alone, single, doesn't have another number to it. Ultimately, you're going to find it. It's true that it is a nitzot nivra. In other words, it is connected to a human, and a human is part of the realm of creation. And ultimately, it's a name of the neshama. So you're telling me it's yochid, it's single. No, it's part of a group, a unit of five. Nevertheless, it is that spark of creator within a person, within creation. The Eibishter has one part within a Yid where he can shine, so to speak, in his purity. So that's in every single Yid. But imagine the Yichida Klalis, meaning the Yichida of all of Klal Yisrael, and especially the Yichida of Torah, the essence of everything. You have a body of Torah. You have a neshama of Torah, which is obviously greater than a body, but imagine the neshama of the neshama, the Yichida. So obviously it's greater than the neshama, it's even greater than the body. Now understanding what this Yichida is. Yichida is the essence, the part of a boira, the part of Hashem, a creator, the way he finds himself within Nivra. In other words, the part of a Yid, where the Eibishter identifies, the Eibishter finds himself, and the Rebbe says, within Yichida Klalis, there's different levels, there's different ways. There's Yichida Klalis, the way he relates to the other Chalakim, but then there's him for himself, the hiddenness which will never be revealed. And now try to take from that essence, from that nitzud boira, that spark of creator that exists within creation, try to bring that into nigla, into the guf, into the body, into nizikin, not just any Torah, but the Torah dealing with the literal lowest realm of creation. Therefore, the only way to create that relationship, that connection, was through praise. You need to have the shvachim. So here the Rebbe explains what was the necessity, what was the purpose in the shevach. The answer is just like the Eibishter. The Eibishter is completely disconnected from creation. You need to create that shevach. You need to praise him for him to come down. So too Rashbi is Yachid, Yichida. He's the Yichida of Klal Yisrael, Yichida of Torah. The Mele. First of all, he saw within everything the essence. He saw the Nigla, the Lukus, the Inibal Vadei. And in addition, now we understand why to bring that Yachid, that spark of boira within Nivra, to bring that into the rest of the regular layers of society, the rest of Torah, you need to have these shvachim. Now, as Dal and they say, we're going to move on to, the question becomes, Hagufa. So how indeed do the shvachim affect Rashbi, if Rashbi is a completely different place? And the Rebbe again is going to use the analogy of the Eibishter, if you could say so. Just like the Eibishter, there's a reason why our shvachim affect him. So let's see. The fact that Rashbi was so disconnected from the rest of the sages, the rest of his colleagues, so how indeed is it possible that the praise that they gave were able to touch him, they were able to affect him, and to be mechadish hashpalim, to bring this flow? And now the Rebbe says, and you move on. This question just is amplified when trying to apply it to the shevach a yid gives to the Eibishter. This is ratzon, this will of Hashem is in the Eibishter himself. The Eibishter is infinite, higher than the system, higher than Yishtalshlus. How is it possible that the praise we give is able to touch that place? Right? There's the spheres. The spheres is the system. Chokhmah is the greatest, highest part of it. And then you have Ratzin, which is higher than the system. The Shevach is Ma'ir, that Hashem, which is higher than the system of Yishal, should come into Yishal. How did that work? How could our praise, so to speak, touch and have relevance in a place which is seemingly so higher and so irrelevant to us? So what's the answer that I was going to answer? First, the guy with the Eibishter, and based on that, in the next paragraph, we'll answer how that applies to Rashbi. This said our avodah. The fact that we do avodah, that arouses the Eibishter, will respond in kind. First point is, because this is what the Eibishter chose. The Eibishter wants. Allah's man, the main nukvin, our inspiration, that Nivroin Titzis Makam Etzlis Baruch should mean something to him. So in other words, the Eibishter chose that it should mean something to him. Obviously, inherently, it doesn't have any value. First of all, the Eibishter wanted it should matter to him. Second of all, it should be able to affect him. It should change the Ur. To the extent it should come down to a place which is so distant from him. Even though it's muvan, it's understood that him on his own is not bound to it. In other words, he's completely above. Now that we understand the fact, right, that the Eibishter chose that this should affect him, now that we say, why indeed did the Eibishter choose that this should affect him? So the beer is, the Eibishter wants this world, our world, should become a comfortable dwelling place for his essence. Now, if it was a calculation, a rational thing, so then you could say we're touching a place of rationale. But no, the Alter Rebbe tells us the idea of a taiva, you can't ask any questions. In other words, we're touching the essence of Hashem himself. And where is this taiva? Where does he want to find his place and feel comfortable? It's in the lowest of the low, in a tachtoin, in a realm where there's nothing lower. This is why the Eibishter chose to be affected by us, because ultimately he wants to be here. He wants to make change in our world. The Rebbe says you can even add, which is something very interesting. Most of what we praise the Eibishter is not about the Eibishter's greatness, but more of how the Eibishter creates the world and how he runs the world and how beautiful the world is. Why is that? Key. In addition to the simple explanation, if I want to bring a certain flow, I need to obviously give my praise in the context, in connection with whatever I'm trying to get. Therefore, if I want to bring vitality into the world, I have to praise the Eibishter about the beauty and the vibrance of our world. The Rebbe says even deeper, you could say even more. Through giving him specifically praise in connection with the lowest beings. This reminds, this awakens the Eibishter's tainug, his pleasure in tachtonim and tachtonim. So in other words, the reason why we're praising the Eibishter, first of all, Hashem chose that this should affect him, and we're praising him about things that are down to earth and low, because ultimately, why did he choose to be affected? Because he wants this world to be changed. Now that we can apply the same logic to Rashbi, there's something very special about the other Tanoim that Rashbi didn't necessarily have on his own, and that is birurim. That is the idea of getting down and dirty and dealing with world to perfect, dealing with our world and using Torah to perfect our world. B'meila, Rashbi himself understood that value, and therefore Rashbi let himself be inspired, so to speak, complimented through the other Tanoim. Let's see. The fact that through their praise that awakened him to allow the flow, if seemingly he's Esan, he's Echida, he's separate, the fact that I'm able to take the Esa, take the Echida, bring it into their limud, their learning, which their limud, like we explained, was to refine and to elevate mitzad, because there's something very special about indeed getting down and dirty and dealing with the creation, dealing with our world, dealing with Nizikin, Taina Shel Sheker, the lowest realm of society, even greater than Rashbi himself, which was just revelation. Why? Because ultimately the Eibish's will is in Birurim. The Eibishter wants our Torah not to stay something above, but he wants our Torah to make change in an imperfect world. And that's also what it means. We said in the beginning of the Maamar, the Tanoim are the ones who establish the world. What's pshat? Eretz is Ratzin. Eretz is no Meloshin Ratzin, right? It's Eibish's will. Not just will, but a strong will, a yearning. Where is the Eibish's will? Where is the Eibish's longing? It's specifically down here in Eretz. So Eretz is connected to Ratzin. The Bir Dvarim Gashmim, to refine and to elevate physical things, and specifically the lowest within the physical world, the idea of damages and lying. And this specifically happens through the Tanoim. So in other words, who's establishing the Eibish's Ratzin? Specifically the Tanoim, the ones who are taking Torah and applying it to the most realistic scenarios. Those are the people who are really establishing the Eibish's will. So through bringing the light, the essence of Torah, that's completely higher than refinement, into the Moisei Aretz, through the Torah of Rashbi, again, ultimately, Rashbi himself gets a certain elevation. We know there's a concept of Yisr Na'ur. Ki Yisr Na'ur bin Abir HaChoshech. The light is, first of all, appreciated, but also elevated, and it's a completely new quality of light when you have to deal through the darkness. The Mele, when Rashbi, which was completely light, complete revelation, when he was able to lend himself to be used to elevate the world, there's a certain advantage Rashbi received. Now, the Rebbe says, in addition, it's not just that now, so to speak, it could be applied and used to elevate the world, but now you have both advantages. Because mitzad atzmam, the Tanoim, they're much lower. So what are they using? What type of Torah are they using to elevate the world? A much more limited type of energy. Through the fact that they're mishabech, they praise Rashbi, and now we're using Yechidah, the essence, the greatest, highest Torah, to elevate the world. You have both advantages. Hamal der Yasher, Hamal der Chayzer. You have, first of all, the greatest, highest type of light, which means Yasher, that penetrates. Hamal der Chayzer, and that itself, you have the mile of Bali Tshuva as well, the mile of elevating and refinement. So the refinement is not being done with materials, with air, with light, which is limited, but it's being done with the greatest type of light, Valderech, which is similar to the combination that will be when Mashiach comes. La'asava tzadikai b'tiyuf, that says Mashiach will make tzadikim return in tshuva as well. Amal tzadikim, amal dabal tshuva, which we know every one of them has an advantage. Tshuva has an advantage where you work through your problems. Tzadikim have an advantage where they're dealing with a world of light. The idea of Mashiach is we can combine the two. You could take the tzadik and give him the advantage of the Baal Tshuva, the advantage of refinement, of really becoming a keli, becoming a vessel, a container for everything you achieved. Ois hey. Now that I'm going to tie it into a story, where in this story we see as well the idea where it's not just there's Rashbi and there's the Maila, but there's something very special about Rashbi being aroused specifically through the other Tanoim, and the purpose of that arousing is that he should then affect and transmit and bring light from where he is into the containers, into the more mundane realms that the other Tanaim were dealing with. So let's say, the Zohar teaches the world once needed rain. Also, they came to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Chizkiah, V'shar Chavraya, Rabbi Yesa, Rabbi Chizkiah, the names, and the rest of the Chavraya, the rest of the people, the rest of the students. What did Rashbi do? So typically the way we bring rain is through davening. Rashbi didn't do that. Rashbi learned Torah. He taught the pasuk Hini Matem Manoim Shavas Achim, which by the way, that's why there's a Shaka Koch in Hini Matem Manoim in connection with Lag BaOmer as well. That's how he was poil rain. Rash explained ultimately, typically the way it's done is through asking the Eibishter, through tefillah. No, he did it in a different way. He imposed, so to speak, upon creation. He brought rain by force through teaching Torah. Nevertheless, it wasn't enough to just have, so to speak, imposed. It should just come from above, but it needed to have been inspired by the Chavraya, by the other students, because that made it that it wasn't just being imposed upon creation, but the world is actually a vessel, but actually a keli was able to implement it. When you have the students, it's taught that a teacher actually actually gains the most from his students. The students are obviously much lower. Nevertheless, specifically when a teacher needs to get low and needs to teach students, he ends up learning a lot more. And that's the message here where you have Rashbi, through his students arousing him, he was able to bring the highest type of light and lowest type of place, which is an advantage of Rashbi himself. Now, why did the story specifically have to happen with rain? So the Rebbe says of art, it says in Bereshis that there was nothing growing, and the reason for this was people weren't there to work the land. In other words, the idea of kilei himter, there's a connection between avodas ha'adam and rain. Ultimately, we are the ones who bring rain through our avodah. Specifically, which avodah tshuva. Like the pasuk says, Yarav kamata likhi, the Eibush is going to bring rain. My Torah is like rain. He uses the word yaref, which is similar to the word arpon, which means a neck. When a yid breaks his neck, which is his stubbornness, yeah. When a yid breaks his stubbornness and a yid is ready to return to the Eibishter, that's when rain comes down. In other words, the avodah that brings rain is the avodah of tshuva. But it is how much Adem is Torah Rashbi bringing down the rain through the Torah of Rashbi means a milas. You have both milas. You have the Torah that Rashbi taught is a mile of tzaddikim. You have the avodah of the chavrai, which is the avodah of bali tshuva. Specifically in rain, which rain necessitates. Rain needs that avodah mulmata. That's where you see the combination of the greatest with the lowest. The idea of that advantage that Rashbi receives through dealing with the lowest things. The Rebbe says we could add even more. There is an example for this in halacha as well. It's brought, that Rebbe brings here from Quintus Yanushal Teisachsidis. There's a concept where a person can acquire an object that exists within his four amas. The question becomes, what's the connection? How do I have a connection to things in my four amas? But the answer is, because the essence of the person spreads to four amas. It's actually nevertheless, this halacha, that my essence spreads to those four amas, which is the reason, the basis, legally, why a person is able to acquire, and this is even if he doesn't even know about it. In other words, it's deeper than your mind, it's deeper than your heart. It's not that I'm, so to speak, mentally, emotionally, I'm elevating, I'm manipulating, I'm not doing anything. I'm just being. And that my being is what spreads and eventually acquires. It's brought in the order that if you're going to steal something, for example, that wouldn't work. It's specifically when you want to acquire, you want to pick something up. Why is that? What's the representation here? I want to take something physical that's outside of my domain and bring it into my domain, bring it into my rishus. The purpose ultimately is I'm koin it and I'm elevating it and utilizing it for the Eibusher. What do we see here? The yichidush nefesh, the essence of the soul, is being activated. Why? Because it needs to elevate. It needs to utilize the physical world. So we see here there's a link between the deepest essence of a person and the need to be mevar. Because the refinement of physical things, that's what touches the essence of the soul. That's what we yichidush Torah, and the same would be true in the context of Torah. Torah also has an essence. Rashbi, Torah Rashbi, the Pnimis of Torah Zoyar, which is the essence of Torah, because there's another chilik of Torah, which that part of Torah is here to be mevar, to elevate the world, so to speak, awakens the essence of Torah, just like your essence is awakened when you need to deal with elevating the world. Now, the Rebbe is going to take it a step further and explain. Now we'll understand what indeed were these specific advantages that they gave Rashbi. We said the idea of Shabbos, as well as the idea of Man Pnei Adon Avaya Rashbi, who is the face of the master, the creator, the Eibishter, that is Rashbi. Let's see. Now we'll understand also why the specific praises that are brought in the Maamar, that they gave him to elicit, right, to bring forth the flow of energy. Hey, Rabbi Yehuda Karli, Shabbos, Rashbi, there was Shabbos and Pnei Adon Avaya. And the Rebbe is going to explain how in both of these you see the concept where the lowest thing is what's awakening and arousing the highest essence, and the combination of the two both ways. Say that the lowest thing awakens the highest, and the highest thing eventually affects the lowest. First thing that's alluded to here is the fact that the Elyon, the higher thing, is being drawn down. Not just it's being drawn down as a mashpia, I'm the one affecting, but it's actually being activated, so to speak, through the tachtin, through the need that the tachtin needs to be elevated. Hine. It says regarding Shabbos it's holy. It doesn't just say kodesh, which would be a descriptive term, but it says kodesh as a word on its own. Mila begarmei, the concept of holiness as a abstract concept, as the literal idea of holiness. Shabbos is completely distinct, completely holy. Nevertheless, Shabbos has the ability to spread itself and to penetrate. First of all, the days before as well as the days after. The days leading up from Wednesday is the days before Shabbos. As well as Sunday, Monday, Tuesday are the days after Shabbos. So we see here how Shabbos, the greatest, highest thing, which is completely distinct, nevertheless is able to affect and to spread. In addition to the fact that Shabbos blesses the days, you're right, Shabbos is, so to speak, holy on his own. A human being, in a certain sense, doesn't really relate to the holiness of Shabbos. How come? We have Yom Tov, for example. Well, we're the ones who establish Yom Tov. Through us, right? We are the ones who are Mekadosh the Chodesh, through the Eidim, through the process. And then, Yom Tov is a term based on us, so we're more related to the concept of Yom Tov. Shabbos, the Eibusher, instilled it within the fabric of creation. It's seemingly, I have nothing to do with it. And the reason for this is because of how holy it is, it's not something that I can accomplish. Therefore, a person, so to speak, can grasp Shabbos. Nevertheless, we have the ability to add in Shabbos. When we commemorate Shabbos, we are holy it. We're making it more holy. To the extent we're able to add also to the pleasure of Shabbos. You're not just pleasurable on Shabbos, but you're actually giving Shabbos pleasure. So we see here both things. First of all, Shabbos, the greatest, highest thing, is affecting. Not just it's affecting, but we have the ability to arouse it. So we see both ways. The Elyon can be put on the Tachtin also can be more the Elyon. Let's see. Weiter. That was the first example, Shabbos. This is also related to the second praise, the fact that who is the face of Avaya, the face of the master. That is Rashbi. Here we see again a unity between the Elyon and the Tachtin. Where do we see this? Havaya is the Shem Etzim. It's the essential name of Hashem. Shem Mefurish, it's the explicit name of the Eibusher. Shem HaMiyuchad, it's the name which is one with Hashem, meaning it's a name that expresses Hashem best. So obviously it's very lofty, it's great. On the contrast, when the Eibusher is referred to as a master, the Eibusher, it's nice for him to be called Adin because he's Adin l'chol b'riyasecha. He is the master of his universe, of his creation. So here there's a clear association between Adin and the world and creation. So first of all, the name Adonai, according to Kabbalah, exists in the sphere of Malchus, and within Malchus itself, not Malchus of Atzilus, which is already the lowest manifestation, the lowest element of the Eibusher, but it's already the way Malchus lowers itself into the Bria, which Bria is already where Yeshus exists, where there's independence. Now, not just it's Malchus of Atzilus where it goes into Bria, but even more than that. From the fact that Azal say you are a Odin, you are a master. All of your creation, even on creation, which are literally just creations, meaning their only advantage is the fact that they're created by the Eibush. That's the only bright side. Like if you take the literal meaning of Adon, a master is a master on slaves. Slaves don't want to be they don't appreciate their master. They don't want to be enslaved. Nevertheless, you're the master. So in other words, you're a master upon the lowest things that don't recognize necessarily your greatness. And here we have the combination. There's a combination here. We have Avaya, Pneo, Odin, Avaya. So Gam, he's going to explain how this connects to another time where we use this term, Pnei Odin Avaya. It says regarding the mitzvah every Yid has 3 times a year to elevate, to go to the Beis HaMikdash. As we're there as well, it says people would go to see or to be seen. But the bottom line was the face of Ha'odin Havaya, the Master Hashem. Here Azal explicitly teach that it was a two-way. It was, you were seen as well as you would see. In addition to the fact that you had an experience, a vision. You literally saw real as something which cannot be grasped. It wasn't just something that you were able to understand, but it was something that you literally saw visually. It was an experience. Not just that you saw more external layers, but you saw the essence, the pneumius, the internal layers, which because of Yiras Pnei, you see the face. You say to Mizu, more than just seeing more than something you were able to achieve. The Eibishter saw you, and the Eibishter's vision of you was equal, was the same as your vision of him. In other words, it was two ways. Says in Tilim, there's a certain Yashar means equal. Yashar, we see the Eibishter's face the way the Eibishter sees our face, equality. How is it possible? How is it possible for a Yid to have the experience of seeing the Eibishter the same way the Eibishter, so to speak, has the experience of seeing us? And the answer is Adin Avaya. There's a place where Adin and Avaya come together, and when you're able to combine the essence of the Eibishter's name Avaya with Adin, that's when Yidin and the Eibishter are, so to speak, able to be on an equal. The Eibishter affects us the same way we affect him, and we affect him the way he affects us. And that's the two compliments they gave to Rashbi, Shabbos, which first of all, Shabbos affects the week as well as a Yid affects Shabbos. Pnei Adin Havaya also, there's an experience here where Havaya is able to descend into Adin, and Adin is able to recognize Havaya. This is the idea here where Rashbi is completely above, but the reason why Rashbi is lending himself to flow Elikus, Akdas Hashem, into Nigel Torah, into the Torah of the rest of the Rashbi, is because they are they establish the Ratzon of Hashem, because Torah is supposed to be applied to elevate and refine our world. Now that Rebbe adds, it wasn't just a spiritual experience, but it got even lower than that. It was a physical experience where a person would bring a carbon, a sacrifice, you weren't allowed to come to the base of an animal. Here we see again the advantage of working through the coarse world. To the extent, one day it was, you weren't allowed to bring a bird, you weren't allowed to bring something small, something easy to refine, you had to use a behemoth, which a behemoth is the epitome of grubkeit, of choimer, of matter, and that has to be worked through and elevated. This is specifically through the behemoth, through the lowest things. That's where we discovered, we found the Eibish's pinimis gil pinim sal kus in a way of vision, to the extent that our vision was equal to the Eibish's vision. That's the message here of Pnei Adin Avaya. Oy Zayin, Rebbe is going to tie it all back into Lag BaOmer, into the idea of Shiur Omer. I'll pick on Al Yuv and Keshes Rashbi and Shiur Omer. Now I understand why Rashbi passed away. First of all, in the days of Shiur Omer, but more than that, unlike many others where the day of their Istalkus would be called based on the day of the month, the name became Lag BaOmer, which is the number of sphere that we're holding, the 33rd day. But the reason for this is why Rashbi is so much associated with Avodah Omer. The whole idea of Shiur Omer is to refine and to elevate one midah at a time. What midah is the midah of the animal soul, the person, the human being. Nevertheless, even though seemingly it's a very low avodah, I'm dealing with my realistic being, and I'm getting down and dirty with every one of my attributes and my midas, which aren't necessarily positive. Nevertheless, we say in the Yiratzin, Yushba Shefa Rav B'chol Ha'ilmos. Through the mitzvah of Sfira, there's an abundance of Shefa. And Rebbe is going to explain what that means. Because dealing with your imperfection, that is what arouses by the Eibishter the greatest, highest hashpah, mamsheches misham shefa. Which idea of shefa is loy ur. It's not just that the Eibishter, so to speak, going to reveal himself in a way of inspiration where Hashem stays where he is, but there's a certain ray or reflection. There's a transmission of an actual substance. That's the idea of shefa. You're bringing Elikus into the world. Not just any shefa, but a tremendous and abundant shefa. And because it's so abundant, it's able to come to the lowest place, to the lowest realm, to our world. When I deal with my literal imperfection. My behema, that's how I'm bringing a shefa rab into every aspect of creation. Is that what catching me asvira bem go for them like boimer? So if attachment of Vedas and Bikram midis, least talkers Rashbi. Now understand what's the connection with Shirsa Eimer and the talkers of Rashbi, and the Rebbe of the brackets adds even more than that, because in truth, like boimer in a certain sense is a conclusion of Shirsa Eimer. Why? We have the 7 midis, 7 times 7. Like boimer is hoid shebahoid, which is the 5th hoid, and it's the ikra midis, the first 5. So when you have all 5 of the first midis, and within every one of the 5, all 5 aspects, so in a certain sense, like ba'im is already a culmination. The purpose, the idea of Rashbi was here in the world is, like we said earlier, it's to heal the division between everything, all the different concepts. So first of all, in the most literal sense, to bring, again, like we explained, from the greatest, highest essence to the lowest place. Bring the strength into the land, literally. Eretz is like the will of Hashem. Like the Alter Rebbe explains, you guys the Kodesh, yeah? This stands in a revealed sense, unlike Ba'imr, because he's Stalkus. The capacity of a tzaddik is when everything he kochten, everything he stood for, stands again now in a revealed sense. So in our world it's revealed, but not just the way it was in our world, but the way it's in its source. And interesting, unlike Ba'imr, the Mittel Rebbe explains all this Barucha in the Siddur of the Mittel Rebbe, like Ba'imr explains how on a day of Istalkus is when everything the tzaddik stood for stands in a revealed sense. And all this idea of Rashbi is drawn down lamata mata into our world, to literal joy. Not just any joy, but a tremendous joy. Together to a joy that breaks through all boundaries. Simchas olam, a everlasting, a worldly joy. Hapiretz is a gidei golus that breaks through the ultimate boundary, which is the boundary of exile, golus. And it brings the ultimate redemption through Mashiach. The Mashiach also something like we explained. What is Mashiach going to do? He's going to combine the advantages of a tzaddik and a bal tshuva. He's going to take the tzaddik, who simply is, on a higher place, and he's going to give him the advantage of elevating and utilizing the negativity and the darkness. He's going to bring that tremendous light, which is all connected to Vatzamiyanis, Osimar. Like we know, the famous letter of the Baal Shem Tov, when will Mashiach come? When we spread Chassidus, which ultimately the idea of Ma'inasecha, the idea of Pnimis HaTorah was first revealed by Rashbi, the Zohar, maybe split in our time. So what's in the Kudah? What are we explaining here? Rashbi was the Yechidah of Klal Yisrael, the Yechidah of Torah. Yechidah is something which in a certain sense is completely above, completely elevated, to the extent similar to the Eibusher's disconnect of our world. Rashbi had that disconnect. There was no relationship between him and the rest of the other Tanoim. How were they able to bring in his Gila Lakus into Torah, into where they were more realistic, they were more down to earth? Just like us, the way we bring the Eibusher's flow into the world is through praising. They use praise to bring the Eibusher, to bring Rashbi's oir into their Torah, to use it to elevate the world. And the reason why it was effective was similar, again, to the Eibusher, because the Eibusher's purpose and creation, therefore he allows himself, and he chose to be affected. So to Rashbi, there's an advantage in Birurim, there's an advantage in using Torah specifically to elevate the lowest place. Therefore Rashbi, through the other Chaviraya, they were able to, first of all, set the ground, refine the mato, and then they were able to arouse a ratz and a will in Rashbi to be Mizgale. And in general, we see here the concept where when you have the combination of the two extremes, you have the greatest, highest essence being revealed in the lowest place, which is really ultimately Geula, the idea of Shabbos, the idea of Pnei Adon Havaya, which is ultimately the most revealed on the day of Lag BaOmer, a day which could break through all boundaries, break through the Galus we're in today. Have a wonderful day. L'chaim.